Hey friend, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. I am your host and fellow worthy warrior, Danielle Damrell. On this show, we are creating space for genuine connection by unifying women of all ages, backgrounds, and experiences. So grab your favorite drink and get ready to listen as we take a deep dive into our stories, making sure to honor and protect them in the process. We will also uncover the threads of creative processing that have already played a part in each of our lives. When we know how to utilize this as a skill, we can continue growing into the joy-filled, triumphant women we are created to be. You are created worthy. Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. I am joined today by another incredible woman, Atee Grinspan. Atee believes that there is a very specific process for helping people, and she is on a mission to share that with the world. As a personal branding coach, speaker, photographer, and best-selling author, Atee is spreading her light all across the world. Growing up in Argentina, Atee experienced many challenges that she has turned into learning blocks and now uses to help other people step into their authority and grow their businesses into the empire of their dreams. Thank you so much, Atee, for joining me today on the very first episode of season 3. You have so much wisdom within you, and I can't wait to hear more about your story of how you became the inspiration that you are to so many of us today.
Oh my God, that intro, girl, like you're going to make me cry.
Oh, that's kind of the purpose.
I am so excited to be here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I would love to just start with you taking us back to where you're from and what life looked like for you growing up.
So I'm originally from Argentina, and I'm going to give you kind of a heads up, right? I've been in the US I got here in 2001. That was like my final destination. I was here before that, very shortly, living in Washington, D.C. But since 2001, that's it. I've been here. I came to Miami first, and then I came to Vegas, and I never left. But I'm originally from Argentina. And life was so different. I always told my mom that I wanted to go live in the US since I was 6. So I don't know why or what was kind of like ignited that. But my mom says I've been saying that since I was a little girl, right? Like, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody that lived in the States. I didn't know anything. So I have no idea. But I always knew that I wanted to travel. Like, I always knew that I wanted to see the world, and I'm a people lover. Well, you and me met in person, and you probably saw that. I really like people, which that's something that not everybody can say, right? Like, not everybody loves to be surrounded by people and talking to people and curious about people. So for me, growing up, I'm an only child. And my home was the home of every kid in the block.
I love that. That's what I strive to provide for my little only child.
Well, and you know what? My kid is an only child, and we kind of encourage that, but like kids are just different now, right? Like they play different, the way they socialize, and like for me, it's just acceptance. Even though we throw parties or we do things on the weekend or whatever, like I'm like, hey, why do you invite your friends? He's like, no, we're just gonna play on the iPads. I'm like, and there is like 5 kids playing on iPads, but everybody's alone at their house, right?
Yep.
It's their world. And I mean, we do that, like we used to do, right? Like during the pandemic, we did like Zoom meetings, or not meetings, but like Zoom parties.
FaceTime. Yeah. All of the things.
So I mean, it's just about acceptance, but like to the point of where I am today and everything is like life was so different growing up. And I personally didn't come from like a poor family, but we were like, middle class, where money was always like it was kind of like the reason to fight, right? Like it was like the power struggles, right? And now that I'm an adult, I can understand why that happened, but that was kind of how I grew up. So I didn't grow up with a lot of confidence. I didn't think like, people in overseas, or well, we're in the same continent, but like they're different. Like here, people are more prone to be positive and to like personal growth and all the things that, even though I know a lot of American people look at me like, really? Yes, like because a lot of these other countries, like imagine Argentina has always been poor in
Hmm.
general.
Yeah,
So
that's part
people
of the
are,
culture.
it's part of the culture is
Yeah.
you have to struggle. Everything is shit. Like not right. Like
Hmm.
so I remember growing up, and my mom is very opinionated woman, which I don't know where I got that
Oh,
from,
yeah.
but also like she got a really hard life herself. So now as a mom, as an adult, I can totally understand, and I did a lot of healing around it. But my mom, in her eagerness to protect me, there was a lot of like, oh no, no, don't do that, or like you can make decisions, or so I grew up, feeling like I wasn't like really that good, right?
Mhm.
Like I was loud, and I was the girl that got kicked out of ballet because she couldn't follow directions, right? Because I
Yeah.
didn't want to do
Were
ballet.
you the too much girl?
I was a too much girl. And like I was the girl that at school would talk too much, but then she would be on every play, right? Because that I did great. But it was always highlighted how restless I was, how busy I was, how loud I was. And then so when on my 20s, and I don't know if this ties into your question, I had my first business when I was in
Wow.
college. I opened a bartending school with two friends, and that was my first entrepreneurship.
And that
uh,
was in Argentina?
and that was in Argentina, and
Wow.
we were wildly successful. Like, yeah, so when people ask me like, I don't know how you do this, or like it's so easy for you, and I'm like, yeah, but I've kind of been doing this all my life.
Yeah. You've
Like
been
not
showing up
just,
as you your whole life. And
yeah,
that
and
has
it was
been.
hard at the beginning. Like I wasn't like that good at what I did, but like even like because we had a bartending school, and
Mhm.
we used to teach the classes, right? And then we used to teach the guys to go and visit bars and visit the owners and kind of offer to do like, because we did flair bartending, right? The shows with the bottles, the all of that.
Oh, so it was like a whole production.
Yes, there was like, and so we taught at the school, we taught mixology, but we also taught the tricks. So that was their distinguish, right? How they would like separate themselves from the rest. So we used to like have this system where we would send the kids were young adults, they were not kids. I'm thinking kids because now I'm an adult.
Yeah. Is the drinking age in Argentina
18,
18?
18 and up.
Okay. I was like,
So
wait a minute. You were 20. So, okay.
so
That
18
makes
and
sense.
up is, and then I left Argentina when I was 21.
Okay. And that when you came to the US for
And
the
that was
first
it.
time?
That was it. I went to Spain. I
Okay.
went to Spain, and I looked for work. I went to Spain with like $200 on my pocket and my ticket that my mom bought me at the time. And even though I had the school, it was still kind of like so I moved out of my house when I was 18. Then I had the school. I was still working, bartending. I was also going to school for hotel management with like minor in marketing. So kind of all ties together. Like when I think about it now, oh my
Yeah.
God, like it all ties together.
I call those the puzzle piece seasons,
Yes.
like where all the puzzle pieces come together and like the hard and the good and the like doesn't make any sense all just comes together to make this beautiful puzzle that leads to where you are right now.
Which is crazy because I remember when I was still here would be college, but there was university. So I don't know exactly,
Okay.
like it's kind of different. I remember I went to get, they give you the university book with all your signatures and stuff like that. And I went to get it because, at that point I didn't know I was coming back. I didn't know anything. Like I
Hmm.
didn't know. I wasn't planning. And so I remember I went, and the main teacher, like the department director, was like, "You are making such a mistake." And we actually had a relationship outside of the school because I was teaching mixology for her at the hotel kind of like association,
Okay.
right? And I was in my 20s, and there were people
Wow.
taking my classes that were in their 50s.
Wow.
Like
See, you're magnetic.
like it now when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't even see that now. And I remember she told me, oh, you're making such a mistake, not following through with your career. And I was like, yeah, but my heart is somewhere else. Like I want more, like I want, and through my life, that was a constant. People don't see your vision. So people tell you what they think is best for you, or what they think, oh my God, you're making such a mistake. Like, but you have to kind of go for that vision, right? And that's literally my story. I always kept going for that next vision, that next level vision, since the day I left Argentina.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So that actually really well ties into what you shared in the pre-interview questions for this season that I'm now starting to ask everybody. You shared the quote, "She believed she could, so she did." And I think it's pretty obvious that this is something that you've lived by. But do you remember when you first thought, like what you first thought when you read that quote and like how that empowered you to continue
So
moving?
I actually didn't come. So I feel like there's kind of such a cliche, right? Quote.
Yeah.
So sometimes I share, I'm like, oh, it's so cliche. But it's written on my calendar. It's written everywhere. And one of the things actually was the first time I read it, for me, it was actually the opposite. It was, oh, that's why all this time things worked out. Instead of the other way, oh, I have to have more belief. I'm going to share something with you. So the only time, there were two times in my career, if you want to call it, because this year when we wrote Leaving a Legacy, there was kind of like a pivoting point to all of this. I never saw all these connections that I'm sharing with you until I started digging for the book chapter.
Yeah. It gave you an intention to process.
Exactly. So what happened was, with the group of women that we wrote the book, we went into a weekend, a wellness weekend, and we had, prompts and like our intentions for our chapters and all of this. And I remember I was like, am I like confusing what I'm trying to achieve here with this, with the book chapter? And our editor, Rebecca, was like, no, let it all come out. It will all make sense. And then we left the weekend, and I took a whole Saturday. I had my son with my mother-in-law, and I was like, you know what? Today's going to be the day for me to actually sit down, no interruptions, and work on the book. And I remember sitting here in my office, and I was like sobbing because I started going back to things that seem so buried. So like the whole bartending school, right? I was in my 20s. I'm 45 this year. So like that was 25 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, it looks like it was 3 minutes ago, but it wasn't. And then so many things happened. And when I started, so the first time I attempted to start my photography business was when I went on maternity leave. So I rented a space, I bought all the equipment, I invested a ton of money, and almost immediately, maybe a few months in, I was like, this is crazy. I have a newborn at home. I'm trying to grow a business. And I really didn't think I was cut off for it. Like I thought I was a failure. And a lot of that came because also I had a very successful career in bartending. I was a world champion flair bartender. So when I came to do this, people were not like clapping, like people were not like throwing money at me over the bar.
Yeah.
Right? Like I had
totally different dynamic that you then had to build.
And my identity was kind of crashed. I was lost. And at the time I thought it was failure, and I ended up going back to bartending. And now when I go back, that was such a lesson for me, because if I wouldn't have quit then, how much farther could I be now? However, for me, it was actually a good decision. But then the second time was when I was, 3 years later, I was like, well, I'm back in the same place. I don't want to be behind the bar anymore. I don't compete anymore. I'm not teaching. I have so much more to give. And I ended up leaving for good. So just for the story, right? Like I worked at the same bar for 16 years here in Las Vegas. And it was a place where we would make anywhere from like 700 to like 1,500 a night. So exactly. So this is very comparable to women when they leave corporate. right? Like you're making all these choices, but that's where you're making the money, but your passion is somewhere else. And this is something that I was passionate for many years. So for a long time, I tried to hide the fact that I was a bartender, thinking there was no correlation to all of that. And even though I started sharing before the book a little bit, when I wrote the whole story for the book, I realized how much everything I have done brought me here. And that's part of what I tell people. I'm like, we need to dig on, that's your uniqueness. The reason why I can talk to people the way I do, the reason why I connect with people goes back to 20 years ago. It's not about now.
Right. It's about the story that you've walked through to get to now. Well, and you continue to pursue that legacy over money and fame and all of the things that you could have chosen to pursue. But to you, living a legacy was more important. How incredible that that's also the name of the book that just
isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? Because I was talking about legacy even before when we collectively chose the name. There were like 2 or 3 options, and that was one of the options. I was like, this is so serendipitous.
Yeah, that is a full circle moment, no doubt.
Definitely this year has been full circle for so many things like that came to like, I know like we talked before it started, like I know you're probably going to be talking about your workshops and authenticity and all of this. And I think that as women, especially as more and more women start businesses, authenticity is kind of the new black. Right? Like everybody talks about it. Everybody's like, oh, you got to be authentic. But the reality is that it comes down to our own belief on ourselves and how we start uncovering. And we realize that when we are being authentic, we attract and we magnetize and we attract the people that we want to be around with, surround ourselves with. And I think that that's where we get that click and we're like, oh.
Right.
I understand.
Which is totally counterintuitive and completely the opposite of corporate mindset, right? Because in corporate, a lot of times you're like trying to be this certain type of person to fit into this mold so that you can climb that ladder. But what we're realizing is how much devastation that leads in your actual life. So this movement,
and I think it is because also you're trying to fit the mold. You're trying to represent a company that not necessarily has all the same values, right? Now, I think that more and more corporate settings are actually trying to attract clients, more women power, if you want to call it, that are more aligned with their core values. But that's very recent. That's not even a decade old. So that's not even like, that's just like now. Right? Like people, they want to have employees that they have their same core values, their same vision, they share the mission, but that's very like new.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that there's still, at least for like the major corporations, there's still a lot of work to be done to allow people to be themselves so that they can feel better about coming to work. Because honestly, we need people to work in corporate. We need people who feel called to serve other companies and keep those companies going, because things like our grocery stores, our gas stations, our phone companies, like all of those are run by people.
Well, and for me, I don't think that everybody should be an entrepreneur. Not everybody is made to be an entrepreneur. That was something that when I was briefly in network marketing too, and I remember, in network marketing, they tell you, oh, everybody should want this. Everybody, I'm like, no. Like some people, and also there is a time and a place in life to actually pursue certain things.
Right.
Like
there's think that season for everything.
There is a season for everything. Like I know one of the reasons I was able to grow my business and do what I do and stuff like that is because my husband still bartends. Okay. So he still, I don't think he'll ever retire. like
That's
from
the same
bartending.
with my husband. He's not a bartender, but he works as like a permits coordinator for a construction company. And we've actually had this conversation where I asked him, I was like, do you think that your purpose is at all tied to your job? And he's like, no, not at
No,
all.
same with
He's
my
like,
husband.
I feel like I go to work and I provide for our family, and that makes me feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But that has nothing to do with who I am, what I feel called to, my
Yeah.
hobbies, my desires, my impact, none of that.
Yeah, and my husband the same. And in his particular case, he actually loves it. It's fun. You know, he only works 3 days a week. So he used to work 5, and then as my business grew, then he went to 4, and now he's at 3. And I'm like, you're gonna end up leaving. He's like, no, because 3 days is like literally I go to work, and when I realize my week is over, and then he helps around the house, and he does all these other like, I don't want to call it chores, but like he takes over a lot of things
Yeah.
that if not, I would have to be doing, like, right. And he's a very present father. And I think that
Yeah.
that's the society is changing now.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I want the society to change. I think
know.
that's
And again, it's not for everybody, right? Like
no.
not every dad is gonna enjoy that. Like he actually doesn't. I hate cooking, so he loves cooking, and like
Yeah.
it works for us. I know it doesn't work for a lot of other families, but it works for us. So.
Yes. And honestly, our dynamic is very similar. I mean, my husband does work 5 days a week, but to be completely honest, he does 90% of the cooking and 80% of the cleaning.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, and I do other things. I do all our admin stuff or whatever. And I feel like the world is changing, but it's changing in a way where we're allowing people to be more them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everybody should allow people to do what is good for them.
Yeah.
Without, as long as you are not hurting anybody, as long as you're not, right? Like,
yeah,
you should do what is best for you, right?
Yeah.
For your family, for your kids, for the way you want to live, what makes you feel alive. And I think that that's where for me, that's why, like, when I name the name of my program is Be You Brand, is because it's like you have to know who you are first in order to show up. And everything else falls into place. Your offers, your pricing, everything comes down to what life do you want to live? How do you want to show up? What do you want to leave in the world? Like, what do you want to leave behind, right? And I think that a lot of us, every single one of us started our businesses. Oh, I would be great at making money doing that. Oh my God, I would love to do that for a job instead of X, Y, and Z. But then we realize as we grow that we're making a difference, that we're helping people. No matter what you do, I always tell people, you're helping people somehow.
Yes, that is so true. And I love that that's a focal point in what you now do, because you still do some photography, right?
I still do photography, yeah.
Okay, but then you have this company, Be You Brand. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what you do in that?
Yeah.
And how
So
your
this
story
is how it
ties into that?
started. So when I started back in 2010, I started with portraiture. I used to shoot families, babies, right? I used to do newborn photography, and I niched down, and I did a ton of newborn photography, and that was my niche. And one thing that I realized by going back to my job after my kid was born, and I think I went back when my kid was like 24 months old or something, like 2 years. And within a year, I knew that I didn't want to be there anymore, right? But like, it was good. I re-encountered myself and all these things. And one of the things that was happening was like, I wanted to leave the job, but I was like, why I'm not taking the lead? Why I'm not giving this my all? Like, what is happening? Is there something wrong with me? I don't believe in what I'm doing. And at that point, that was the first time I dove into personal growth. Until that point, I didn't even know that I had mind game, that I had self-doubt, that I didn't know what imposter syndrome was.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm a flair bartender, and I'm here, and I'm gonna, just like I did it over here, I'm gonna do it over here, and whatever. That's why, you know, like she believed she could, so she did. I never in my mind, when I was living in Spain, I was barely making any money. In my mind, I knew that I was going to end up working in Las Vegas and competing and doing all, like, it was obvious. I'm going to do the thing and that's going to happen. Right. But then you realize that is not that linear. Right. As shit starts happening, you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't that linear. But I didn't get that until I was in my 30s and I started my photography business. So that's when I briefly got into network marketing. And I always say network marketing gave me two things. One was it opened the doors for me to personal growth and to people that were, a lot of people were impact driven, not everybody, but a lot of people were impact driven, and groups of people that everybody wanted better and more, and in a good way, not in a I'm unsatisfied kind of way, but in I'm happy with what I have, but I can do better. Mm-hmm. And that blew my mind because that wasn't really my environment at the time. So that was kind of like what put me in the map of this road that I'm in entrepreneurship now. That was one. So then the second thing was, because I was in network marketing, as I was building a team, I would tell my people, hey, if you get to this rank, I'll give you a photo shoot, or I would do a shoot for my team, right? And stuff like that. And I remember thinking, I love doing this kind of photography.
People.
And then people, but they were not babies, they were not moms, it was completely different. So one of the things that I was doing, because I was in health and wellness, I was in the same company that Melissa was part of. Okay. And so that's how I met Melissa back in the day. So one of the things that started happening, I would see my girls in my team, well, drink my shade, do this. I was like, no, we want to build you a personal brand. We want, or the other way around, they wouldn't show up. They're like, no, I don't know, right? So that's how it all started, because I would help my team build their personal brands for our network marketing business. And as that kind of evolved, I was like, this is the reason why I'm not leaving my job, is because I wasn't really passionate as I am right now for photographing babies or photographing families. There was a lot of friction in that kind of niche. I didn't love it. I didn't love the business part. I love the photography part, but the business part of that particular niche, I was like, if I have to deal with another pregnant mom with postpartum depression, because I had it, so I knew how they were feeling. They were impossible to please, because I was impossible to please when I had postpartum depression. It had nothing to do with me and everything to do with what they were going through, right? So I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't have the passion for this. And then on the side was happening all this network marketing growth and creating brands for my team and stuff like that. And at some point, I really started thinking, and I was like, I don't think my future is in network marketing. And I created my first, it was a 12-week, 3 months personal branding course, and I launched it, and I had clients. I had one sale on my launch, but I had 2 sales on my launch, I think, and I had about 5 people that joined. Most were from my network marketing company, and then the other 2 were paid clients. And I started with that, and then that moved to 6 months, and that ended up being what is Be Your Brand right now, which is zero to hero. It's from, I always say, my client might have a ton of experience at what they do. I have one particular client that she's the perfect example, because she's a nutritionist, and she went to school, she has a degree, she has all these accolades and letters behind her name. But she didn't even know how to promote herself. So even though she was doing Instagram, she was doing all the things, right? She was like, well, I can help you lose weight, and I can help you do this, and I can help you. So people wasn't really hiring her, because they're like, well, can I just hire a personal trainer? Can I just hire an actually weight loss specialist? Can I? So when we started working together, the number one thing was, what do you love? What is your story? Right? And she started telling me how her story actually came back from, she was a dancer all her life, and she was anorexic, and I didn't know that. And she was like, they didn't teach us how to eat properly. It was all about being skinny, and you had all these weigh-ins. And so eventually we niched down for her into sports nutritionist. And now she works with like some of the Golden Knights here in Vegas. She actually worked with my husband when he did his full Ironman. So he worked with athletes to help them really be healthy and to achieve their goals. And she loves it. But she was so lost. And the thing is that so many times she would think, well, I'm not cut out for business. I don't know how to run a business, but the reality, she didn't have that roadmap, right? And so many people think that branding is the logo, the photos or whatever, and that's just a part.
Yeah, that's one part of a very, very big puzzle. Yeah,
exactly. So what I do is I work on the big puzzle, which is the strategy, right? Mm-hmm. The mission, the vision. Where do you want to be? What is your vision for this business? And even though that evolves, where do you see yourself 3 years from now? Why do you want to do this? Right? Like, what is moving you? Not only the making money part. We all want to make money, and I want to emphasize that because I don't like. I'm unapologetic about the fact that I personally am money motivated. Like, I love seeing the numbers, but at the same time, if I don't like what I'm doing, there is no money you can pay me to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm an Enneagram 7, so for me, it has to be fun.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. So, like, so if it's fun, you may not pay me, and I'll be there.
I love that though, because sometimes you have to do that, right? You want to do that. Sometimes the things that, like this podcast, you're not getting paid to be on this podcast, but you're here sharing your story.
There is so many opportunities to do things where you can make a difference. They're going to give you visibility in your business, but at the same time, nothing is linear, right? Like nothing is like, oh, I'll do this and you give me this and I'll do this. And it has to be a win-win, but there is different wins, especially. Yes. And I think women, we are more purpose-oriented. Mm-hmm. than guys in general, just because of the role we have been playing in society all or forever, right? Guys, they, like your husband said, right? Like guys, they feel like they are doing what they are supposed to be doing, what they are providing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
For us, like if there is a moment in my life where I could totally not run a business and do nothing, it's this one.
Okay.
And I'm like, no, thank you. Like I'll go into a depression and no.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Well, okay. So we talked a tiny bit about creative processing before we started recording, but just to give the listeners a reminder, my definition of creative processing is activating one's creative mind to process through a certain intention. So the reason I bring that up continually is because I believe in the transformative power of harnessing this processing type as a skill. And the best part is, everybody does it already. But when you know better, you do better, right? Like Maya Angelou, such an incredible source of wisdom. But that is something that I also asked in the pre-interview section. And you mentioned that running is your primary creative processing method. So can you give us a little peek into what that looks like for you?
So I didn't even know this until, so this is the thing. It's very easy for all of us. And I'm sure that the women that listen to the podcast, they're probably working from home. They're doing many Zooms and stuff like that. And one of the things that I realized is that my energy would tank. Right? Like as I'm doing Zooms and I'm here sitting down, and sometimes I need to sit somewhere else because I love my office. My office is super cute, but then I'm feeling like I'm in a box. It doesn't matter how cute it is. Like right. I felt like I was in a box. And then something that I started doing, for example, when I have today before the podcast, I actually think that I put it on my stories. I'm like, this is what I do in between calls. I put some music. I leave, even if it's going around the block and running a block, is because I feel like the endorphins get high, and then you can sit down and your mind is going. And I know a lot of people do breath work. Breath work is very similar, but for me, the act of actually moving my body and running, and I know that people think I might go and run for a long time, but like if I need to like write an article, or when I'm creating content, for example, I create content on Fridays afternoon. That's my last thing of the week. I don't have nothing else to do later, right? Like whatever. So what I do is like after my lunch, I go for like a brisk walk or like a run, and then I start creating my content.
I love that.
Because I can write and I can and sometimes that run is 5 minutes. I have a treadmill upstairs, and actually I've been trying to get one of those jumpy things and try it. So I have
like
a lot
the little
of
trampolines.
people that swear for that. I have knee problems, so I've been a little bit like scared cat about it. But I have found, even like in the morning, if I work out regularly, but if I don't have the time to actually fit in a full workout, I'll go for a run. From my kid goes to school by himself, so I'll walk, run. He has the scooter, and I run with him to school and come back. That's a 10-minute run. That's it.
I love that.
And energy, my predisposition, the way I get so many ideas when I run.
Mm-hmm.
I am very well known for like being running and like recording stuff on Siri.
Yes. Oh my
Create
gosh.
voice memos.
Yes. Melissa does that too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And she'll like be on stories running. And I'm like,
yeah.
I could not do that.
But it's because my brain processes when I'm running. And then recently I had an amazing experience. Like I did a half Ironman, and the running part, I got so high. Like I was in like a different dimension. It was just crazy. Like crazy. And the high lasted for about a day and a half. And then I went,
wow. And then it tanked.
Oh my goodness. Like I felt like depression for like a day. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, so with creative processing specifically, just like taking that and using it as an example, do you think that just from your own personal experience, there would be an added benefit if you, and maybe you do this and you can clarify that, if you set a certain intention before you started running? And I think you kind of mentioned that with like sitting down to write or creating content. But if you're setting the intention of, I'm doing this act so that I get this.
Well, I do completed. when I do content, one of the reasons is I think that as I critique my own content, right? Or like look at my videos or whatever, I'm like, if I'm sitting here and I'm using my phone and I'm sitting on my desk, I feel like sometimes it comes through like blah. But when I run before and I'm like, okay, what do I want my people to feel? Right. And I go on a run and I'm like this, and it's almost like a gratitude run.
Yeah.
Right. Because when I'm in a place of gratitude, not everything is about creating content that teaches people. It's how people perceive it, how people receive it. Yes. Right. So it's almost like that meditation, that intentions meditation. For me, it's all like running is the best way I found to actually do that, because I also realized that when I self-sabotage, that's the first place that I go. I don't know why it is. It's the first thing that goes out of my calendar is exercising.
I love that. You prioritize that.
Well, no, when I self-sabotage.
Oh, when you self-sabotage, that's the first thing that gets
like,
out.
That is the first thing that, I don't have time. Like I get like really.
Oh, yes. I feel that completely.
And I'm like, that's not true. I do have time, but like it's all the excuses. So bringing running as part of my creative process has allowed me to like just go upstairs, run for 10 minutes, come back and have that energy. I do it a lot sometimes when again, back-to-back calls, and I'm like today I'm not feeling that. I'm feeling great, right? But sometimes you have days and days and days that you're on calls and you're teaching and life is crazy and you're just sitting all day long and you're like, what the fuck is happening here?
Yes. And that's building that muscle memory of like, okay, I'm feeling this in my body and clearly I need to redo something. I need to reset. I need clarity. I want to feel joy. So having that muscle exercised in that intentional way to create. In the first season, I talk about how creative processing isn't just sitting down with all your crafting supplies. I think that that's something that a lot of people think about when I say it is like, oh, you have to be a crafty person or you have to be left-brained and be super creative. But the thing is it's not. Like running is absolutely a creative processing method. Creating spreadsheets is some people's creative processing method.
Okay, you just gave me an idea that I didn't even think that this was a creative process. But for me, when I create, and the way I teach content creation also, it's actually very systematic. And I tell people, like, first you want to drop all your ideas and you want to have all those titles. What are you going to talk about without writing or photos or videos? Like, first is that, like, idea dumping, and
Get
then
it out. Brain mapping.
Yep. And then you take a break. And I tell people the reason is because the idea mapping and the executing, they're completely different sides of the brain. Right. So part of that now, that because that's kind of how I do it. So I go for a run, then I come and dump all my ideas. I usually eat, do my makeup, whatever, and then I go to execute.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because now I'm like, okay, that is my creative process. But I didn't realize even though I teach it, like, okay, it's very systemized.
Yeah. And that is why we have these conversations. And I keep bringing it up because almost every person who I've interviewed on here has gotten to a point in the episode where they're like, oh my gosh, I have more. I do this. I do this in a very different way than I was thinking I do. And then once you know better, you can do better. You can harness that as a skill. You can exercise that muscle. You can continue to fall back on it when you are feeling lost or feeling a block. And then you can get yourself into alignment again.
This really reminds me of one thing when it comes to like on our personal growth, right? On our journey, is people are not doing better than anybody else. They just have better tools.
Yes.
For me, actually taking those breaks to run, and actually last night, I think, was it last night? So, Halloween, we went out, and then, the whole trick or treating, the Monday night, like walking around. Then, I'm launching next week. So it's been extremely like busy. And I was telling my husband, I'm like, today I'm going to stop. I got home at 4:30. I had a speaking engagement yesterday, and those, it's all your energy.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put my computer away. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm going to go. I was in bed by 8:45 and woke up this morning. I'm like a different person, dude.
Yeah. That's protecting your peace, prioritizing your joy.
But it's also a tool. Because most people be like, oh, I can't even tell you, all my list is so long of all the shit I gotta do. But the thing is, you cannot tackle that list with clarity. You cannot tackle that content with joy. You cannot tackle any of that if you are not full, right? So I think it's really understanding those tools that make you better. And I think that so many times, and I work, a lot of my clients are, I don't like saying beginner business owners, because that's not true. A lot of them have been in business for quite a while, but they haven't really built that authority. So they've been in business. They saw a little bit of success, but they can't, that next level of success is not coming because they're not seen as authorities, or they don't have that credibility, or they don't have that bigger audience, right? And one of the things that I see is like it's about doing instead of being. Right? Being the person that shows up instead of like trying to show up everywhere, like throwing spaghetti at the wall, and like run yourself to the floor. And even me, I did that at the beginning of my business. I realized really quick that that's not the way.
And it's easy to get back into that when you are facing I call them full seasons, because I'm trying to get away from using busy, since we are in control of our lives and the decisions that we make. But when we're walking through a really full season, it's so easy to get back into that hustle mindset of like, I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And what are you going to do to slow yourself down, to speed back up?
One thing that I realized too is, like, especially in entrepreneurship, there are things that are absolutely indispensable and you have to do. Most of the things are not indispensable. If you don't send that one email, it's not going to change your business. If you don't post it's like consistency obviously is important. But if you miss 2 days, it's okay.
It's not an
right? Like,
emergency.
no, yeah, you don't miss 2 weeks, right? But like, but
Yeah.
my whole point is like, I have many times my kid has come from school on a Friday. I do content on Friday, and he's like, "Well, I want to go to the park," and I'm like, "You know what? Yeah, let's do it." And I'll do content, and I'll tell him, "Okay, but tomorrow I'll have to do this," and I'll move content creation to Saturday.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole fucking point.
Yeah. That's time freedom. That's what you
That
get into entrepreneurship for in the first place.
Exactly. So I think that that's where we need to get very intentional about realizing that things need to get done, but at the same time, most of us, we're not curing cancer here. We're providing a service. Somebody can wait an extra
Yes.
30 minutes. Like I always tell my assistant this, when we get in like really full seasons, especially because we do photography and she does all the editing for me. I'm like, people can wait an extra day for their photos. Send them an email and be like, hey, we're running a little bit behind. We're not curing cancer here.
That's the key, is communication. Like as a business owner in general, you have to be able to communicate, and you also have to have boundaries. It's so easy to lose those.
Yeah. And in my particular case, I work with business owners, so they know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that.
This conversation is awesome.
I'm so glad that you are an incredible, incredible person. And like, I am just so honored that you are here. As we wrap up today, I'd love for you to share just any exciting things that are happening in your life or business. This will be coming out in December. And so, yeah, just with that in mind, is there any?
So super exciting. Actually, this is kind of like inspiration for a lot of business owners. If you hadn't put a vacation on your calendar, put a vacation in your calendar. Number one.
I need that.
The reason why I'm going to tell you this is because I thought that I could never close shop. I couldn't do this. We tried it last year. I have a 1-year program, you guys. My alumni loved it because they were able to catch up. They were able to not feel like they were missing out on the program. They were able to go back and watch maybe lessons that either they wanted to rewatch or they wanted to revisit, right? They were able to sit down with their intention for the new year. So that's number one. I know you said it's coming up like the first week of December, right?
Yes.
So if you're a business owner and you haven't put a vacation in your calendar, I urge you. So we always do December 20th to like January 4th, but we come back on the 3rd and we do like a day, right, of where we're at in our business. And then we start serving clients again on the 4th. But then like, just come and follow me on social media. Let's be friends. If you are growing a personal brand and you want to get photos and you're coming to Vegas, I do a ton of clients that come from other states, either for conferences or when they come on vacation. Now they're relaxed. They can take the time to do those photo sessions in a different place. I do VIPs. So if you want to work on your brand and you are here for work or something, we can do a whole VIP and revamp of your mission, vision, your content pillars, and your photos. So just
go to book your vacation for Vegas and go see her and get your branding photos done. I love that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that has been my favorite because people come here, they're so excited. They bring their birth clothes, they get their hair done. They don't have the kids around. They are not in the business of their everyday life, and they show up for their business in a completely different way.
Oh, I love that. And we will have all of her links in the show notes. So her website, her Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook groups.
Yeah, and I have a Facebook group. It's Personal Branding Strategies for Female Entrepreneurs. I do free training in there every Wednesday morning. And those trainings, I'm going to tell you, people get so much out of it. I have groupies. I always tell them, like, you guys are my groupies. People that for a reason or another, they haven't been able to either afford to work with me or whatever. And they show up every Wednesday and I serve them because I believe on the power of giving. And I believe that we all want to be giving value. So come and hang out with me.
Yes. Okay. Well, so grateful for your time here today and your courage and vulnerability to share your story. You, my friend, are created worthy. So please keep sharing your light, stepping into your authority that you already have discovered within you. Thanks for tuning in to the Created Worthy podcast. If anything in today's show resonated with you, can you do me a huge favor and go leave a 5-star review? This helps more listeners find the show, and it also expands the impact, messages, and stories that are shared here. All the links and guest information are in the show notes. If you're on social media, I want to personally invite you to continue the conversations about these important topics that we're talking about. You can find Created Worthy on both Instagram and Facebook by just typing in Created Worthy Podcast. Can't wait to talk to you soon, friend. And don't forget, you are created worthy.